Well, so for my mid project, I basically started I was really interested in the government shutdown that's currently happening. So I actually originally began by looking for a visualization that was based on data on the current shutdown, but as it is um still in progress right now. There isn't any set data that I could find or any visualizations. So while I was searching, I actually stumbled into um, a visualization, an article with a bunch of visualizations based on the 2018 to the beginning of 2019 shutdown. And so I saw this visualization on it and I just knew I had to choose this for my mid project. Um, basically within each of the departments in the federal government, they basically have a plan ready in case there is a shutdown. And within the plans for each of these departments, some of the employees who are basically considered quote unquote essential or unessential. If they're considered essential, they actually are expected to continue working with or without pay. And then the rest are usually sent home or basically on unpaid leave, which is considered furloughed. So this chart basically shows all the departments and then their rates, their furlough rates. And it's honestly looking at the issues with the visualization, it is honestly sort of a mess. The first thing I noticed was that there wasn't any exact reasoning for the placement of each of these boxes representing the departments. Um, there was a previous visualization within the article that mentioned that the scale of each of the departments they were um, showing was based on the size of the actual department, but there was no actual indication anywhere specifically on this one. So I kind of assumed, but it can be considered an issue because it isn't really mentioned. And um, the coloring is kind of awkward. And then this grid thing that is added, I know it's supposed to represent like the percentage, but it doesn't really add much to the visualization. If anything, it kind of just distracts you from the percentage while you try to figure out what it means. Um, and overall, just the layout of each. Some of them get really, really small here, and there's actually missing data with the FCC and then the Department of State. So honestly, it's kind of really not ideal if you actually want to compare the departments just because of the sheer length of it as well. So I couldn't find any actual attached data which this was taken from, so I basically just extracted the percentages myself into a table and then calculated, since it only mentions the furlough ones, I kind of calculated the working with or without pay, in the way you would expect from like 100%, subtracting it from 100%. So my first visualization redesign was a bar chart, and it kind of focuses on the furlough rates only because I really feel that the main point of the original visualization was to just show how bad the furlough rates were within all the departments. So I decided to focus on only that variable within the first visualization. And as you can see, departments like the National Science Foundation and then the Environmental Protection Agency and NASA, these kinds of departments have a very, very high rates. And I decided to order them from the highest to lowest just for ease of um, reading and viewing. Um, and then the departments like Homeland Security and Justice and Transportation, they seem to have more priority, so they have less employees on unpaid leave. Um, and overall, just I feel like the kind of conclusion that I got when looking at which departments had higher rates of furlough employees, basically that it's kind of an assumption that almost every government job is sort of like very stable, and the chances of being like laid off sort of the furloughing isn't necessarily laying off, is very low, but the security of the job isn't as much as you would expect. And um there's definitely some departments that have a higher priority. And then for my second redesign, I did a grouped bar chart. And this one includes both the furlough rates and the working employee rates by department once again. Um, so basically, I feel that this representation or visualization kind of gives a different approach because the first one was kind of focusing just on furlough rates and how those employees from certain departments are suffering, but then I feel like or are at least uncertain about where their career is heading with the shutdown. But I think this kind of offers another perspective because um, the departments like Homeland Security and Justice Transportation and all those who have a higher still working rates, um, a lot of them, um, it kind of shows that because they have to kind of continue working with or without pay, as was mentioned in the original. There wasn't any distinction between who's working with or without pay, so there is a possibility of many employees working through the shutdown without pay and uncertain about when they'll be paid again. And it kind of shows that in those departments with higher priority in terms of continuing to work rather than being furloughed, there is a higher degree of kind of commitment that's needed during uncertain times like shutdowns, which I believe is like an interesting thing to notice. And so, yeah, overall, I think my visualizations are a lot clearer and, having them all near each other like this, able to interact and see the rates of furloughing and still working, I think is much clearer than the original. I think it's kind of just a mess. And yeah, I'm honestly, I was honestly confused by the layout of this. I think this is just like a lot clearer. And the interactive aspect is also nice as well. Thank you.